coming and we're not meeting in December, we could talk about one of our favorite holiday traditions. So everyone celebrates different holidays this time of year. So I'm just curious to know what some of yours are. If anyone want to share.
I'll start.
Go ahead, Sarah.
So this is actually kind of a new one for us. So my husband's from like a 4th generation cattle farm, which is, I'm from the North Woods. So like cattle farms.
Canada?
Yes. So Canada. But yeah. Oh, it'll come out. But every Christmas now, Zach, actually my husband, drives the tractor, and then we do a big hayride, and like we start over in Kingdom City, which is like towards off of I-70, and then we just kind of go all around like the back roads. But it's really cool. They've been doing it, I guess, for like 25 years now. And so like the little local county stores will have pizza for us when we come in, and little snacks and stuff. But we all stop over the highway, and we all have to stop and wave. We all wear Santa hats. So if y'all are driving on I-70,
it's so crazy people.
It's us. Yeah. At first I was like, oh, I'm a little nervous. Now I'm like,
It's just Cowboy County. You're just good in Cowboy County.
that's true. We're all like, yeah, keep the spirit alive. I wish it was my tractor. No,
That's
it's
all.
Dad's. Oh,
That's cool.
but yeah, it's pretty fun.
My holiday tradition is, this is the first year that I'm not going home for Christmas Day. I got married this year, and so we're switching things up a bit. But usually on Christmas Day, my mom is obsessed with like the Elvis Christmas songs. Specifically like Blue Christmas. Like I feel like that song is like deeply embedded into my soul now. But like Christmas morning, mom has that like, we hear Elvis pretty much all day. But it's just like the one, she won't listen to Christmas music like really even before Christmas. It's like Christmas Day is her time to shine. Yeah.
You're lucky.
Which is why I think I'm also
the day after Halloween.
Yeah, Halloween is the best holiday, don't at me. So anyway, that's not really like a tradition, it's just I'm so used to it. And if most of you've never met my mom, Sam,
I've been lucky enough too. She's wonderful.
she's very country, and she I'm her new doggy, so she cannot sing to save her life. Like, it's so, and she knows, but she's like in the vibe all morning, and I'm just like, my stepdad and I are like, oh, you're just not. She's like, I'm having a good time. Like, okay, let's move on. So anyway, hopefully you all enjoy meeting my mother. You know exactly what I'm talking about.
I got one.
Go ahead, Steven.
We've been married for 20 years.
Woo! Congrats.
And we do have a tradition. It's Christmas Eve.
Okay.
Sure. It's a tradition, right?
It is our tradition now. Yeah.
Will you describe that?
Oh. I mean, we do like snack dinner.
This already sounds
Cute,
fun.
yeah.
We do this too.
Charcuterie,
My dad
like,
loves a snack.
Yeah.
Like
Snack
a
dinner.
relish tray, a snack tray.
Yep.
Cheese, meats, you go around Schnucks, look for the cheese case and the meats and the crackers, and you go to Eat Well, which you have to eat well, not Lucky's, right? And you go in there and look, and so yeah, we find all that fun stuff,
We're crazy.
fondue or something, right?
Yeah.
And that's
And
what,
champagne.
and champagne.
Champagne snack dinner.
She said I couldn't say, I'm at her parents' house, and my tradition is get drunk and put up with their parents. It was a joke, it was a complete joke.
Like, then I rephrased it.
No, that's a complete joke.
We'll talk about the snack. We'll talk about the snacks later.
We do kind of like a snack. Well, usually Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, my dad is the cook in our family, so he like sets out all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But my stepmom is always like, Gary, get in here, because he holds the snacks and walks around the house. And so it's like leaves like a trail around the whole house of all his chippy dippies and all of his snacks. We just get a plate. He's 65. We're not going to change him at this point.
I think I know it's a tradition because our kids expect it. They're like, what are you doing for Christmas Eve? Like,
Yeah, snack dinner.
snack,
Oh,
okay,
I'm
good.
excited about snack
Good.
dinner.
That's great. So, yeah, that's good.
Anyone else? These are fun. Great, go ahead.
So my mom comes from a big Italian Catholic family. She's one of 9. And so we have an Italian Catholic tradition that we do every Christmas Eve called the Feast of the Seven Fishes. And my mom makes this dish called anchovy bread, and it's basically stromboli with just cheese and anchovy, and it's incredible.
Do you do this, Sarah? I feel like you come from an Italian.
We don't do the seven fishes, but we make ravioli. So we don't. Yeah, we kind of like veered off from the seven fishes. It's a lot for my mom. She runs a bakery too.
Yeah.
So Christmas, we try to keep Christmas Eve pretty easy. So she'll do the dough beforehand, and my sister, her, and I all roll it out, and we do ravioli. for Christmas
What's
Eve.
the origin of Jaworski? What's your dad?
So yeah, there's a Polish side, but yeah, a lot of Italian. Yeah.
Hey,
The food's
maybe
better
that's a good
too.
time. Got sauce?
Easy.
Anybody else? Elizabeth.
So I grew up in a very Norwegian family, so we're talking lots of smoked fish, we're talking pickled fish, we're talking fish every way, stinky fish. And you know, it's like when you just grow up in it, you're used to it. But then when you try to expose other people to it, you know what I mean? Like lutefisk, for example, is not for everyone. But yeah, once a year I have to stomach it. But when I married Will, my husband, he comes from an Italian family, and his grandmother cooked all the food. They had like a pizza. I mean, it was like so cliche. They had a pizzeria in San Diego. They did the whole thing. Yeah, like it's really dangerous to like be around. Yeah. But yeah, so we were trying to like meld. You know, we've been together for a long time, trying to figure out like what our tradition like food wise is. And so I think we've kind of dialed it in a little bit now. So we try to do some kind of like pasta leading up to Christmas, and then we also do like the snack dinner. But it's like a cornucopia of, you know, tin fish and like crackers and cheese.
Tin fish is all the rage right
It is all the rage. My friends in New York City, and maybe you can attest for this too in the Bay Area. But yeah, it's like you go to a restaurant now, and I send snapshots of this to my friends who tease me all my life for eating tin fish, because I'm like, this is gourmet. Yeah, you get a plate. You pay like $40. You get a plate with like one can of fish and like a thing of butter and like saltine crackers, and people are like, what? This is my snack for
And it's like that's like blue collar food.
I
And all of a
know,
sudden it's
right?
like a fancy
I know, everything comes full circle. So yeah, so that's kind of what we do, and then we do we kind of celebrate on the 21st. It's my birthday, but it's also the winter solstice. So we do a solstice spiral, usually in our backyard with lights and like little mementos, and we kind of walk it and have like, you know, the intentions for the next year and stuff like that.
I love that. From the South, we don't have anything like that. I have like, well, my mom is part of a big Irish Catholic family, so it's just usually a lot of drunk people. That's like pretty much it.
I want to hang out with your mom. She sounds amazing.
Well, my mom, she is a good time. People, she is a good time. People meet her often and are like, your mom is so much fun. You guys aren't anything alike. And I'm always like, it's true.
Because
Like,
someone has to like be the, you know,
I'm
the
the
rock.
anchor. And it's like, Mom, let's go.
Rein it in. Drink a glass of water.
You should have seen her at our wedding. Whew. She was like, she couldn't decide if she was excited or if she wanted to sob, if she wanted to like.
All the
it was just a
emotions.
lot of things. Hey, thanks everyone for sharing. So if you don't know where you are at Creative Mornings. If you're not already following us, we're on Instagram and Facebook. I admittedly don't use Twitter that much, and will likely continue not to use it very much. Not paying for a blue check mark. So if you're not following us, that's where you can find out about new things. I always like to point out that there are chapters meeting all over the world for Creative Mornings, and so it's one Friday a month. Your chapter can pick which Friday that you want to choose. We are the third Friday of every month, so if you don't know that, kind of like, I don't know what word I was going to use, but just maybe bookmark that and as a reminder to yourself that we're going to meet every month. But it's cool to think about listening to people all over the globe are meeting for Creative Mornings. The theme is cohesive across all chapters every month, which is also very cool. But we each get to pick our own speakers, our own theme, who we want to speak on the theme, and how they would like to speak on the theme. So also we have a few global sponsors that just give us all of the assets that we need to promote every month. Again, we don't make any money doing this. Like, I don't get paid to do this. No one on the team does. It's all volunteer. But in order to have a website and to have assets to promote every month, Creative Mornings partners with MailChimp, so they're our global partner. They have a new report out that's about energy versus time management. So they release these reports every month, like a benchmark report type thing. And it's really interesting. They usually survey thousands of creatives to get the results. So if you're interested in something like that or just want to know more about it, you can always download these. Additionally, Creative Mornings offers field trips. So these are field trips you do virtually where you can go into an artist's studio or learn to do paper mache, or there's a variety of things that you could do in terms of business skills or creative skills or just like hands-on skills. It's very cool. I know Sarah's been to quite a few of those. I actually went to like a marketing one a few months ago that I really enjoyed. So these are always free, just like these are. They're just not in person. So if you are interested in those, always they release a new set of them every month, and they're covering gamut of interests. So additionally, if you are interested in volunteering, most of you can do volunteer with me, or if you know someone that you think would like to volunteer, we're always looking to add people to our team. So we launched our chapter pre-COVID, literally February of 2020, and we have like a lot of momentum. COVID put a kibosh on that. It is what it is at this point, but it is really hard to do these events and to like put these things together and for people to show up and volunteer their time. I'm specifically looking for someone who wants to help Sarah, maybe book speakers. I could really use someone who is good at social media. I have all the assets and art that they would need. It's just like a matter of posting and keeping some sort of, is that your husband?
Yes.
Okay. I was like, I see a couple of kids. So.
Oh yes. We just realized this morning because my daughter came in and said, "I don't have school today." I was like, "What? Yes, you do. What? Yes, you do. Oh, so
Yeah, come on in. There's
so the
donuts.
gang's all here. My husband's gonna come in here.
Oh yeah, kids are. Listen, our philosophy is everyone's creative and everyone is welcome.
Yes,
So,
there we go.
so anyway, if you are interested in volunteering, you know someone who would be interested, please send them my way via this email address. We're just looking to expand our chapter in 2023 and to like really try to build up some momentum. I just don't have the capacity to do all of that with the few folks that we have. Everybody's under the bench. So just anyone that you would know, we'd happily take some new volunteers. And then before each speaker every month, we like to read the Creative Mornings Manifesto just as a reminder of why we're here and what we stand for. So would someone from our organizing team be willing to read this aloud?
Look at Mike.
Mike does it a lot.
I don't.
Do you want to do it again?
I don't need.
You can sit there and read it.
No. I'll come.
You want to
Give us a performance, Mike. Come on.
Elizabeth, you're looking for new actors.
Yeah.
Mike might be your guy.
Here we go.
I don't think he needs a
He's
microphone.
got
I'm
rid
gonna
of
ask. I'm gonna let him own it. Go ahead.
Wait, do we need a rhythm? Is this part of
I
it?
don't know.
It's so good.
Anybody feel it?
Just let him own it.
Everyone is creative. A creative life requires bravery. Honesty. Nope. A creative life requires bravery. Action. Honesty. And hard work. We are here to support you, celebrate you, and encourage you to make the things you love. We believe in the power of community. We believe in giving your name. We believe in face-to-face connections and learning from others, in jazz hands, virtual claps, and
Hey, in-person snaps.
in-person snaps. We bring together people who are driven by passion and purpose, confident that they will inspire one another and inspire change in neighborhoods and cities around the world. Everyone is welcome.
Remember, the doesn't know is that Mike also plays the saxophone, so I was really hoping that one day somebody reads while you're doing
Giving us a
sax
smooth
man.
sound.
That's not a bad idea.
Everyone's welcome, including kiddos. So this month's theme is truth, so I'm going to give Sarah an opportunity to come up and introduce our speaker. And then Elizabeth, I'll get your slides set up.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Hi again,
everybody thank you all for coming this morning. Happy to see your faces. We know it's a lot asking people to come out right before the holidays, but we are so happy you're here. Our guest today is amazing. Most of you probably already know her, but she's wonderful. And honestly, Elizabeth is somebody that I've just known around the community. I'm not super close with her yet. We're very good friends, hopefully. But the first time that I actually saw her, she was putting on a play here with Greenhouse called Our Town. And it was one of the coolest experiences that I had when I first moved to Columbia. And I remember just being really touched by it and just thought she was really something special. So as part of the speaker booking team, which right now it's just me, so if you have anyone that wants to help, I would love some extra help. But Elizabeth was one of those individuals that I was like, I know I want her to speak. We get themes sent to us every year, so I literally just sent her a list of like 10 themes that I thought that she'd be a good fit for, and just said, you know, what aligns with your soul here, and she picked truth. And so I'm really excited to have her come today. She's incredibly versatile, wonderful. I'm sure she's going to talk about what she's got going on tonight. I don't know if there's any tickets for that.
It's sold out, but people can, there are no shows, so people always can get people in.
But I'm very excited to see you tonight, but I'm excited to bring up Braaten Palmieri to talk to you about truth today.
You just hit the down arrow. These are your signs that should work.
Good morning to the small but mighty crew. Thank you so much. Like Sarah said, thank you for coming out. I know this fall has just like creamed everyone, I feel like, and I think I'm getting, that's like the energy I feel, and I think it's the energy that everyone I know is feeling as well. And so we're almost there, team. The train is pulling the station. It's the holidays. Let's try to stay healthy. Let's try to just like make it into 2023 in somewhat one piece. That's my goal right now. You're gonna hear some chirps from my children over here. So my name is Elizabeth Braaten Palmieri. For those of you who don't know me, I have been living in Columbia for about 11 years now. We moved here, my husband and I, for his job at the university, and we had been living out east, I think is where we were, but we had bounced around quite a bit. I would say after college, we lived in Boulder, Colorado, we lived in New York, we lived in Minnesota, we lived in Vermont, and then we landed here. And so when we came to Columbia, we were uncertain how long our time was going to be here. And so, and what I mean by that is it was kind of like, okay, when do we get out of here? When do we get in? Are we get a year, 2 years? What do you think? And what ended up happening was, like in all good communities, you meet people that you connect with, that you bond with, that you understand, and the community becomes about the people and less about where the location is, right? Because here we are in the middle of America and flyover territory, whatever you want to call it. You know, there's no mountains, there's no sea, we're lacking those things, right? But what we have is, what I love about, the old Missouri motto is, what is the Missouri motto?
Show me.
The show me state, right? So when I came here, I felt like everyone was kind of posing a challenge to me. It was like, oh, you say you're this? Oh yeah, prove it. It was kind of like I was getting that vibe, and I was like, whoa, that's kind of like a New York thing, but cool. So there was like a lot of gumption and gusto in the people and the vibe. And I met, remarkably enough, that first year that I moved here, maybe just months after I moved here, I met the woman who's holding hands with me up there. Her name is Emily Adams. She is from England, and she had moved here just around the same time for her husband's job. It was kismet. And we were both actors, we were both directors, we were both theater educators, and we just kind of started hanging out and working together. We were directing for a children's theater in town called Trips a little bit, and so we were kindred souls. And we decided that it was just, this town needed something that we wanted to bring to it. We were gonna force upon it, thrust upon it. And the town might reject it, and at which point we would say, okay, cool, well, we like tried it. But we decided that we were going to start a theater company, something that we personally wanted, the kind of work that we wanted to bring to the people. And she and I are both, fairly innovative people. We'd had a lot of experience with non-traditional theater as well. We were both trained actors and everything, but non-traditional in the sense that you don't necessarily have to be in a theater. A lot of people, think of theater and they're like, yeah, you go to the Fox and you pay an exorbitant amount and it's glamorous and you watch a traveling musical and there's a lot of lights and there's a lot of pomp and circumstance and it kind of is flashy and it distracts you and so you're like, oh, I think it was good. I don't know. It's like, how much do you think about it afterwards? I don't know. And that is amazing. That is the beauty, it's the magic of performance and theater. The kind of theater I do is the opposite of that. Yes, I want people to feel and think, that is the main thing, but mostly I'm rooted in storytelling. So I'm about stripping it down and empathizing with the characters and really kind of disappearing into those characters. That's kind of my favorite thing, and that was Emily's favorite thing too. We're also physical actors. We were trained in lots of different, forms, but just naturally we're movers and dancers, and we've dabbled in different things, circus and all the things. And so we knew that our company was going to have to incorporate all of these things. So we had no space, we had no money. And so we thought, okay, well, we're going to be site-specific, obviously, because we have nothing. And we're going to depend on the graciousness of this community. So we went to a couple people. I don't want to, knack anyone's gender here, but we went to a couple guys who owned some property in town, and we were like, I always put her first because she's British, and for some reason it just sounds like a little more oh, wow, who is this? And she's like, hello, this is what we're doing. I made her sound like Mary Poppins. She does not know. She's actually more Manchester, so she's a little bit almost more Cockney. She's like, all right, and so they were kind of like, ugh, I don't know. This sounds weird. I'm not sure. And that's cool. I get it. We were foreigners, and they wanted us to prove it. Show me what you do. I'm not gonna take a risk on this. So we went into the Columbia Art League, and at the time Diana Moxon was the director there. And of course, Diana's British, for those of you who know her. And so I was like, Emily, you take this one. And so we went in there, we gave her a pitch, and she said, yeah, right, let's do it. Perfect. What nights do you want to do it? Perfect, And so I wrote a 3-person adaptation of A Christmas Carol. And Allison Myers, who's a beloved actor in town, he's now in his 90s, but he had taught at Stevens for many years, and he had taught at Hollywood High acting for years. He was an actor out in LA, and he had played Scrooge maybe 1 million times up at Stevens over the past 30, 40 years. And so we were like, oh, let's have him, let's bring him in because people know him in the community, and then Emily and I will play all the other characters, which is classically a greenhouse style. So it's a lot of switching one hat, just kind of stepping into a character. It's not about the costume telling people this is who I am. It's about you believing who you are and just telling the truth is what you're doing. So that was our kind of test to the community, and we sold out all 3 of our nights that we did there, and things just kind of started to travel word of mouth about us, and then slowly, we were rehearsing in my tiny living room at the time and stuff, but slowly we gained sponsors and had awesome photographers like Stacey Pottinger documenting our work. She took both of these photos up here, and so it was kind of a slow growth process, but Emily and our brains were moving really, really, really fast. So all the ideas were there. And because there's so many cool spaces in this community, this building we've actually used, I don't know, maybe 6 times for shows. Do you know how many shows we did?
I think it's 3. But
no, we did Stalin Lee, Our Town, Hamlet,
oh yeah,
Measure for Measure.
Right.
There's another one. I don't know. Anyway, we've done a lot of shows in this space. But space becomes an integral part of the piece for us. It is a character in wherever we are. So in the picture to your left, this was from a show called Three Sisters. There's only 2 sisters in the picture, but Three Sisters. It's a Chekhov piece, and we actually performed it at Sager Reeves Gallery right over here. And that was just a beautiful space. We had the audience in a round, and we were performing in the center, and all of the actors, when they weren't on stage in the center, they had to become trapped in the gallery, so they were always kind of like in the space with you. Gives like a little bit of a creepy vibe, but the idea of that piece is that these people were all trapped in Russia and Moscow in a story, and they desperately want to leave for whatever reason, but they can't, family or responsibility or whatever. So that was a really beautiful setting for that piece. And then this show is called Tartuffe. This is an old restoration piece of theater that we did at Yoga Soul. So those of you who recognize that rope wall, so that space was so fun. We had all the garage doors open, and we had a trampoline in there. And so when you entered, all the actors entered from outside, and they had to run in and jump on this small trampoline to then propel them into the space. We had aerial silks in that show, and we used the rope wall as well. And as you can see from this picture, it was a very physical show, super fun show. What do we do to go next?
Down.
Awesome.
Elizabeth, Godot.
Oh, thank you. Waiting for Godot was the other one. I knew it.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I'm just gonna kind of like go through some images and just kind of keep speaking, and I might be touching on like what the image is and I might not be. But truth overall, so why I was connected to this theme of truth is because, oftentimes when I meet people and they're like, oh, you're an actor, you must be a great liar. That's like, I've probably had that line given to me so many times, and I'm always like so confused. I'm like, I bet you're a great liar too. But really, it's always confusing to me because I'm actually the worst liar. I cannot I'm terrible, right? Terrible poker face. And I'm always confused by that because acting to me is all about telling the truth. Because if you cannot believe the story you're telling, then how can you ever think that anyone else is going to believe you telling that story and waste their time sitting there watching you tell that story? So when I'm teaching, I teach all around, but I teach at Stevens right now currently at the conservatory and direct up there. And so that's like one of the things. One of the first things I say is, well, you're telling the truth. That's what you're doing. You know that's what you're doing, right? And sometimes it takes a moment for them to kind of figure out what that means to them. But to me, it's all about the truth is in the storytelling, and it's the actor's job to empathize with the characters. And it doesn't matter what you're playing. You could be playing an awful person. I played Richard III, and he's murdering people, but I had to empathize with him in order to play him, so I knew what it felt like to step into that skin and to feel the emotions he was feeling that projected him or propelled him to do the awful things he was doing, and so on and so forth. So let's see, I'm going to kind of work through. So I've written several original projects, and some I've written with Emily Adams, and some I've written on my own. This one is one that I wrote. This is called To the Sea, and this gentleman is Addison Myers, the one who played our Scrooge. I wrote this play specifically for him. Addison no longer can perform. He's in his 90s now. His mind is kind of failing, but he performed up until just a couple years ago, and he doesn't really leave his house now. But I think I was pregnant with my first daughter, who's 6, Lila, and I really just kind of out of respect for him and his career, I really wanted to write something for him, and so I wrote this piece, and we performed it downtown at a space, this really cool space that was Imago Gallery at the time, and then it was like Lizzie and Rocco's, and now it's, I don't know, TBD. Very cool space if you've ever been in there. It has like a second floor and an open staircase that comes down to it. And that's another thing with greenhouses. We use spaces because of the space. We don't go into a space and build a set or anything like that. I use a space because I find, interesting, qualities about the exposed, brick or piping or whatever it is, and that's what we use. So in this space, we had projections. I work with a lot of other artists. I work with filmmakers. I work with a lot of musicians. The musicians, I don't know if you've ever had Tim Pilcher speak.
No.
He'd be amazing. So Tim Pilcher, anyone who knows him in town, he is a musician, but he's an audio genius. And he has not only played several different instruments for live for shows of mine, but he's also written scores for shows of mine, which he wrote an original score for when I did Mary Shelley, the Mary Shelley Project, and so on and so forth. But so I'm always working with these people that I'm kind of in awe of, and that really keeps. But I'm the boss, so I'm kind of like, you know, it's a really lovely marriage between collaborators, because I like to hire people that I can give them my pitch, tell them my ideas, and then I can completely step away and trust them. I don't have to hover and be like, oh, don't do that, you know. They just kind of take it and make it their own. So Chelsea Myers, who owns Tiny Attic Productions, who'd also be great. Yeah. She did all the projections for this show, and this woman in this piece, her name is Jenny Hipscher. She's an incredible moving actor, physical actor. She came to us. I brought her here to do a season of shows many years ago, and then she's from Brooklyn, and then she ended up loving it here and buying a house and staying here for years, yeah. And so she got to work quite a bit with our company, and then she moved back to Brooklyn because she went to grad school. So 2 years ago, she moved back, and she's home with her people out there. But she had a great run here, and I'm just gonna keep going through. There's some more pictures over here. You'll recognize some of these spaces. So this, North Village Arts District, we did a piece called Peer Gynt. It's a famous old Ibsen piece, but I wrote an adaptation for it. Super wacky, again, just quick changes. We had to run around the entire block when we had to go to the other side of the space. And we were doing this in June, and it was 90 degrees, and we all lost about 10 pounds during the show, which to me, I love. To me, acting is a physical feat. It really is. And so when I'm training my actors, I'm like, it's the body-mind connection. You gotta be here, but you can't overthink, and you gotta be 100% in your body. You have to be so connected. Otherwise, it's just not believable, and you're not telling the truth. You know, you gotta really live in that body of that character. This is, let's see, up to the upper left for you guys. That was a production called The Nutcracker. Emily and I wrote that. It was a Christmas piece, but it was like set in 1960s, very mod, had like a Wes Anderson feel to it. We did that in the old Cat Studios on the Stevens campus, which was pretty cool. We did another show there called Big Love. Below that's me, and I'm playing Hedda Gabler, and we did that at the Missouri Theater. So people were like, wait, you're using an actual theater? I thought the whole thing was that you don't perform in actual theaters. And I was like, yes, but. So we used, we were on the stage, but the audience was on the stage with us. And the audience entered through the alley, because that's very greenhouse. Gotta be different. And also we just saved money by not using the lobby of the theater. So that's the other thing, is when you run an arts nonprofit, it's like, how can we save money here? But that was a very cool space to be able to use for that piece, because we used it the long way. So the play space was just kind of like vacant, which kind of matched the whole feel of the emotions of the piece itself. There's a show that's in Orr Street right there. So that's Hamlet right there, and that's Ophelia about to do her death dance. And let's see, next to it is Romeo and Juliet. So Romeo and Juliet, we actually performed right over here. If you guys know where the old Hoot building office was, or studio, so it's right on the other side of Sager Reeves Gallery. That whole parking lot, it kind of shifts you down, creates like a natural amphitheater, and there's a garage door. So we performed Romeo and Juliet on the roof, on the scaffolding on the side of the building, down below, and then the garage door opened to reveal like Juliet's chamber. And that piece was, I could not get away doing that now. I had a lot of apprentices from the university. I had them sign waivers that said, I'm not liable if anything happens. They were literally jumping from the scaffolding onto the roof. There was probably this much space where they could have dropped down, 2 flights. And they're like, yeah, this is great! And I was like, all right, let's do it.
Sign here first.
Yeah, exactly. Sign it on the line. So I was playing Mercutio in this one, and this other awesome chick was Tybalt, and that was our knife fight scene on the roof. But again, just like very, very fun. You know, people, I started getting, you know, random emails from people saying, oh, I drove by or walked by and like stopped and like was watching this, and it was just like, I couldn't believe this was happening like right there, you know. And I love that. I love that that's, you know, it's what you unexpect, Como, right? So, and our tagline is innovative theater in unexpected places, so it all kind of goes together. This one, The Three of Us, another picture by Stacy, is from a show called Big Love, and we took these photos in the old Museum of Art and Archaeology, which matched perfectly with that show. That show, we had the first first nude scene, I guess, was from that show. And I think that was one of the pieces that really put us on the map. A lot of people were like, oh, I'm going to that one. Anna, this amazing actor to the right in the picture, she's come a few times. She just did Lungs with us this summer. She lives out in New York. The opening scene is she comes out on stage and rips this wedding dress violently off her body, and she just reveals she's completely naked, and then she submerges herself into this clawfoot bathtub. And it's just kind of a moment of like, and then we go into the play, you know, and there's no more nudity in the play after that, but it's just kind of like, it really like grabbed people, and people remember that one for sure. One of my favorite projects, Big Love is probably when people ask me, what's your favorite play? It's so hard because they're like children, and you put so much time and energy into them, but Big Love is probably, to this day, the story, the role that I played, that whole group, that was probably one of my favorites. And Hoot Design Company, that is from our production of Frankenstein. Okay, so we dabble in immersive theater. We don't dabble, we do quite a bit of immersive theater. So immersive theater is when the audience is actually traversing and moving through a space and the action's kind of happening in different areas around them. We did that with a production in here, and then we did that with Frankenstein. So we took over Hoot Design, and it was Silverbox Studios at the time, and then the art, the catacombs in the basement. The audience could move through all these different spaces, but there was something different happening. So it was kind of like a choose your own adventure. And you would hear something, we'd like hear a scream in another place, and then people would like kind of like want to run up and see what was going on up there. But the opening scene was kind of like the most beautiful, like thrilling scene I felt like. It was about a 12-minute movement piece. So the garage door opens to reveal Frankenstein, who's played by Jenny, picture that moving, dancing actor of mine, and she's in this bodysuit that had like muscles and bone painted on it. And she broke free from these chains and then does this whole kind of like movement piece that's, you watch kind of like a baby learn how to move and walk and stand and like the whole thing. And it's kind of painful to watch. The whole thing is kind of painful. Ian and I were controlling the lighting there, the sound. Tim again like wrote the score for that piece, and it was super spooky, and created this instrument that he was playing like saws with to like make all these vibrations. So, you know, that's the kind of stuff I just love. I'm just a geek for that stuff. And then we invited the audience into the space, and then that's when they could start going through. You could open Dr. Frankenstein's desk drawer. You could sift through his papers, his drawings, his letters. Everything was kind of like tangible. And that's a model that a lot of companies are using now, but I was inspired by a company in New York they have a piece called Sleep No More, and I had experienced that. If you ever go out there, you should check it out. And then I came back to Columbia and I was like, okay, I'm gonna do some stuff like that. So it's all about using what you see, stealing what you see, and reusing. I mean, that's kind of, you know, what art's about. Right below that, me screaming, pandemic hit. It wasn't awful for us. It actually turned out to be a really cool experience because we are non-traditional and we don't have a venue that I had to pay the bills for. We did actually lose our studio space because I couldn't keep that up, but because we had a rehearsal space. But I pivoted immediately and we went to a virtual venue. So the first piece I did was, and this is when Zoom like just started. Okay, so everyone's like, what am I doing? It was just like so weird. I did a one-woman piece called Natural Shocks. It's about a woman who is hiding out in her basement like waiting out a tornado. And I performed it in my basement every night live. And I had people from all over the world watching it because we were all trapped at home. And so I was like, wait a second, this isn't too bad. The only bad part is I have to tell my family to leave the house for an hour because no one could make a sound. So I had to like bike, my kid around the neighborhood for like an hour every night while I was performing that. But it was really, really fun. And it was like I almost felt ashamed to say that because I had so many friends in the industry suffering so hard. People who changed their lives so they could just go into the arts, and now they couldn't work and they couldn't pay their bills, and you couldn't make art. Essentially, you could still make art. That's the thing, is that you can always make art. And I think when something like that happens and your world is shook and the rug is pulled out, you're kind of like, I don't know what to do. So for me, making that pivot immediately was crucial, and that kind of saved Greenhouse that year. That's a poster for Natural Shocks. Next to that is Lost Letters. This was a show that I wrote for True False. I was pregnant with Lila, so 6 years ago. And this was an immersive piece. It was one of the coolest projects I've ever worked on, and anyone who got to experience it can attest to that. Did you do it, Stacey?
I didn't get to do it.
I'm sad. Okay. So it was a puzzle. It was a puzzle performance. I collaborated with a puzzle maker and a set designer and a musician who created the score. And it was a one-woman piece, so I think 10 people at a time would enter into the space, and they would have to solve their way into these 3 rooms. And if you didn't, and you were timed, you had an hour. So if you weren't able to listen and properly connect the dots from what the actor, myself, or Jenny, we shared the role, we took turns with it, because we had to perform it like 6 times a day during True False, like for 4 days. I was pregnant. And I was like, I'm tired, but I'm gonna go party afterwards, I'm gonna go on a dance party. But that was just like an incredible experience, and people really had an awesome response to it. We were written up in a lot of big publications, which was really cool for us, just because people were coming in for True False to see it and experience it. So that was, and I did that in collaboration with David Wilson. All right, how are we for time, first of all? Because I can scooch through.
About 10 more minutes.
Sweet, okay. Again, just kind of showing you use of space a little bit. This piece right here to the left, that was from Don Juan, a show that Emily had written the adaptation for. She was already back in England, so Emily moved back to England about 3 years, almost 3 years after we started the company. So I've been running it solo for about 7 years now. She established Greenhouse UK, so I have a sister company there. We still write together and we still perform together. So my company went over and we took one of our original shows and did it at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival a few years ago, and were able to use some of the British actors from our company there and collaborate that way. So we would love to be doing more collaboration, but we both have small children. So what we can do, the best we can do right now is we can co-write things. We can keep writing together and stuff like that. So she wrote that piece, we performed that. That was really cool. So we had, when people arrived, the first half an hour that the doors were open, these 3 women and one of them, we were just in this tub like this, looking kind of dead. And it was like, performance art piece, if you will. But, people were just like, getting up. People were taking selfies with us, we're just like, but it was really fun. And then the music hit. And music, I always start every process when I'm working on a show with music. It always starts with the music. So we had this amazing soundtrack for that show. It was all like 60s, oh my gosh, it was like Nina Simone. It was just really like seductive music, but just great beats. It was awesome. And then this is Measure for Measure, my adaptation of Shakespeare's Measure for Measure here. Again, lots of physical movement, dance, singing. We used Portishead soundtrack, so some of the songs we sang from Portishead. We had 2 drum kits. One was here, one was there, and the drummers were kind of responding to each other throughout the piece, and the audience could move through. They could go into some of these doors, and it sometimes could be shut in with whatever actor was in there doing something, so they could watch them in there. So it's kind of, again, not for everyone. Like some of our stuff is always different. Like, so you can never come and say, oh, that's what they do. No, because then you'll come again and be like, oh, that's what they, oh, no, I don't know. And it's moving and it's shifting. Again, this is a piece I wrote called, oh my gosh, I've written too many plays. What was this called, Stacey? Being There.
Yeah.
Being There, this is about mental illness. I had, this sounds so weird, but I had a blast interviewing people for like 6 months leading up to that who deal with depression, just various things in order to kind of create this character and write this piece. And we did it in a dance club in town because the piece revolved around dance. The only way this woman could kind of, when she had to kind of leave the world and go into her own mind, she'd hear like club music and like imagined everyone around her like just dancing. So that was kind of the basis of that piece, and it was a really great piece. And then Pear Gynt, this is another shot. We were on the roof over by like where fretboard is. And then down below here, Speaking on Truth. This is a play we did last year called Hilma, and it's about this artist who's becoming very famous now, like 100 years after she's due for it. Hilma Afklint was a painter from Sweden, and her work now, if you Google her, she's like blowing up now, but she had kind of a interesting life, and every time she went to a man to kind of validate her work, they kind of were like, meow, and then Kandinsky started doing stuff that was like, looked exactly like hers, and Kandinsky was like, yes. And it was like, so anyway, now she had a show at the Guggenheim a few years ago that just like blew everyone's minds, and so now she's kind of coming to the forefront, and she was a mystic as well. She was just a really fascinating woman. So a friend of mine wrote a play about her, and I produced that. I really try to focus on, not 100%, but I focus on women-centered pieces, and a lot of female writers is important to me. This piece, this was a still from Mary Shelley, the Mary Shelley Project, and Anna, the actor in the middle, she played Mary. We did that at where Skylark Bookstore is now, which was a really cool venue for us. Yeah, it was a great space. This is just a shot of my basement when I was doing Natural Shock. So you can see the whole setup is, my stage manager is on my ironing board facing me, like controlling, like letting the 100 people in each night, like on the thing, and I'm in front of my laptop with like, a simple light, performing like a 50-minute monologue every night. We did, okay, so during the pandemic as well, these are kind of like pandemic shows. So we did, our version of A Christmas Carol was our original piece that we did 11 years ago, and then we rebooted it out at Bluebell Farm several years ago, and it was just so beautiful out there. We did like a whole thing. You walked in and you smelled, apple cider, and there was violin, Christmas music, and like there was a bonfire outside. It was just like dreamy, and so we performed in that beautiful space, those of you who've been there. And then a few years later, when the pandemic hit, we actually decided to do it again, but we had a documentary filmmaker shoot it in one shot. So we were moving around the barn everywhere, and she was following us. And then we put that online. That was our show, and it was so cool because it was the year that no one was with their family. So then you could like share it with your family. You could all be watching it at the same time, and that was a really successful thing for us. So that was really cool. Nothing Can Stop What Is Coming. That was another pandemic play where all the actors were from all over the country, but we were able to rehearse together on Zoom, and then we were able to perform together. It was crazy. And all those actors I would definitely never be able to get now because they're working a lot in LA and in New York, but they were like, oh, we're all sitting at home right now, we have no work. And I'm like, I have money, I have funding, and I want to pay you to like do this. And this piece was written by two women about QAnon, and it was very timely. And actually the day that we were in rehearsal, one of the mornings we were all in rehearsal, we were all over the country at the time. There was someone in Georgia, a couple in LA, a couple in New York, I was here, someone in Minnesota. That is when, everything went down in DC, January 6th. And we were like telling a story kind of about this, and we were like, oh my gosh, this is like hitting way close to home. But that was one of those very timely pieces that was relevant at that moment, and we were able to like tap it at that moment because of Zoom. Thanks, Zoom. This is a one-woman show. This is the first show that we did post-pandemic. Well, it's not post-pandemic, I suppose, but the first show that we did after like that year that we couldn't do anything in person. I knew that we needed to be outdoors so people would feel safe. And I also it was so stressful rehearsing with people during the pandemic. You know, we're wearing masks, we're trying not to get sick, you know, it's just like, you don't want to, everything spreads so fast and then your show's out the window. So I did a one-woman show called Grounded about an airline pilot, a woman who gets pregnant unexpectedly and she becomes grounded, and then they train her to be a pilot from, you know, a trailer in the middle of nowhere in the desert, and where she's, you know, killing people kind of on a Game Boy practically, and she starts losing her mind. And it was so intense. That piece was so intense, but it was so beautiful too. And having a child at that point, it was affecting me as an artist, just how I've changed over the years, you know, with children. I was scared to have children at first because I was like, oh, this is going to change me as an artist, and it's going to change my time. Time is my currency as an artist. It's like all I have, really. I'm clearly not doing it for the money. So I'm like, I need time in order to like work my thoughts through and process and write. And if I become a parent, I'm not going to have that time. That's what I thought. And really what happened is everything shifted, and I had to become better with my time. So that's happened sometimes and sometimes not. But so that was Grounded. Really cool piece. It was very cinematic. We filmed it so then we could, people could then buy a ticket and watch it after the fact wherever they were in the world. And that's kind of become a model for us. It's not, you know, the thing that I believe the most in, because I believe theater is best when it's live in person. But this we realized from a business standpoint was also okay. But it has to be the right piece that we'll film. I won't film everything. That's another shot from Grounded, so you can see the audience down there. That's over in the arcade district over here. We had this really cool, Chelsea did all the projections for that. It was just beautiful. David Wilson directed that. Next to that is we performed in a lake. Why not? It's called Lake Shakes. I was stringing, I think 6 scenes from Shakespeare together that had something to do with water in them. And Ruth Acuff played harp with it. And so the actors, so this place that we performed in was really incredible because it's the acoustics there. It's my friend's lake about 11 miles outside of town. And so it's private property, and the acoustics are amazing because it's kind of this bowl with trees that just like protects it. And so the actors came in on boats, kayaks, we swam, we were on paddle boats, we were in the water the entire time, and the audience was on the beach, and it was really cool. And everyone's like, "You're gonna do that every year, right?" Ow! You do things different every year. That's just another shot from Lake Shakes. And that brings me to what I'm doing right now. So the project that I've been working on for the past year plus is about a year and a half ago, the SHSMO, the State Historical Society, reached out to me and said, we have these love letters in our archives from this woman, a notable Missourian, who she donated them in 1981. And someone just told me that maybe you would want to do something with them. And which is like, I was talking to Sarah about this, I was like, this is a total honor, you know, for people to think of me when they're like, oh, what do we do? Something, these need to live in some capacity, but we're not sure how. I was working on Grounded at the time, and I was kind of consumed, and so I said, oh, yeah, this sounds really cool, but I'm like, I don't know. And I just put a pin in it, and I circled back around. They started sending me the snippets to read, and just to kind of entice me to wet my palate, I started having meetings with the ladies in the archives at SHSMO, and then I finally kind of committed and started spending a lot of time there and really reading through all of this woman. This woman had an incredible life. Her name is Olive Gilbreth McLaurin. She was born in La Plata, Missouri, and in 1915 she traveled abroad and met a gentleman in Russia, fell in love, and they embarked on a 20-year relationship via letters. But we only have the letters he sent her to go off of. So I crafted this play based on, you know, it's mostly a true story. That's like a line in the play, but because, you know, some of what we do have though are we have her books. She was a writer, and she was a travel writer, and she was incredibly progressive for the time. So she became a serious muse for me, and I kind of just disappeared in her world for the past, year doing all the research, and then I wrote this piece. The part of the process been the shortest is like the writing, the actual construction of the play, and then the rehearsal process has been very quick because I could just keep reading and researching. Anyone who does documentaries, my friend back here is an editor for documentary film. It's I don't know how they do it because I feel like you could just keep you just keep on, you just keep going. I need to have deadlines, and I'm so glad that I set this weekend as my deadline to perform the show, because otherwise I would have been working on this for another couple of years just because she's so fascinating. But I wanted to tell her story, and I wanted to tell her truth, and I believe that these stories, there's so many stories like this in the world, but when someone recognizes something special and then finds someone to take it, take it on the journey to bring it to the surface, that is really touching to me, and so I'm all there for it, and that's my job. I'm a storyteller, and like I said, actors are about telling the truth. So when you meet an actor, don't say, "Hey, but you're a great liar." They're out there telling the truth. So I want to just kind of leave you with a little bit of, I don't know, just like a piece of food for thought, we'll just put it that way, that you have to believe in the story that you are telling. And you have to believe that, the life that you're living is out of a place of truth. Otherwise, no one's going to believe you. You're not going to believe yourself. And that is why I continue doing the work that I do. It's like I said, it's not for the money, and it's hard at times with family to balance everything. But I love bringing this work to this community, and it feeds me in so many ways. And I hope to do it until I. So that's it. Thank you very much.
Do we have maybe just like 2 or 3 minutes for
Take
questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
So, do you select a space first and then craft something around a space, or what's the process?
Yeah, I get this question all the time. So I have like a file in my brain of like nooks and crannies and places all around, that I want to work in. I've used the same place a few times, and then I've used some places only once because it only worked for that one piece. But I kind of know of the places that I would like to use. It's kind of about who will let me use it. Sometimes I pay rent, sometimes I don't. We used the chapel at Stevens this summer for a play we did called Lungs, and it was a beautiful setting for that piece. And I knew that I wanted to do that in that space specifically. So I kind of had to like wait until the dates worked with them, and then the dates worked with the actors. And that's the hard thing, is because I don't have the freedom of having my own space to just be like, oh, I want to do this now, or I want to do that. It's like I'm at the mercy of other people. And so the question, I have also just like a running list of plays I want to do all the time, but it has to be the right time, the right space. Working on a piece called Winchester, about Sarah Winchester, who's the heir to the rifle family, and she lost her mind, and it's like a really great story, but I started working on that pre-pandemic and then stopped, and I want to go back to that, but it's about having the right space, and I have to have the right space for that piece to do all the things I want to do in it. And like I said before, I'm never looking at a space that I can go and like put a bunch of my junk in. I want to use a space that is everything that's there is what I need. So yeah.
Love that.
Anyone else?
Well, thank you so much.
Thank
Melissa.
you.
This was great.
Yeah.
Thank you
And
so much.
Yeah, follow her stuff in Greenhouse, because they always have a bunch of news about upcoming.
Yes, we're on.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're on all the social medias except for Twitter. Elon Musk, but and our show tonight is sold out. But if you want to come, just come early. Live music starts at 7 p.m. The doors open at 7, and usually we can get people in as long as they just show up and get on the list. So that's that.
Thank you so much,
Thank
Elizabeth.
you.